So you're switching up your system. Maybe it's because of recent events, or maybe you're just looking for something new to do. You've gotten done with the system you've been playing. It's overstayed its welcome. Well, Pathfinder 1E might be the system you're looking for. Not because of Pathfinder itself, but because of a third party system called Spheres of Power, with its sister systems of Spheres of Might and Spheres of Guile. They act as a way of controlling how magic, martial, and more social encounters work in your system. It allows you to create knights that don't wear armor but walk around in normal day clothing, undercover. Or maybe they wear a giant siren over their head, announcing their presence, spooking any near dwells. Or maybe maybe your players want to do something more detective like, and you're having a hard time figuring out how to play this in your D&D system. Well, Guile upcoming system is going to include more role-playing rules to allow you to function off of what you're looking to do. It also includes a bunch of different feat-like abilities that allow you to interact with the world in different ways. Allows you to come up with things like schemes that you just have active, and they just work. Or even plans, which are just like, I activate this plan, and then I can just play it whenever or when that plan has a function. Like, I never bought this item in the town we were in, and I need that item now, but I didn't think of having this item here. Well, I have a plan that allows me to basically say, okay, I can get up to my level in 100 gold pieces of items from a store as long as they're not too expensive. So now that grappling hook I didn't think of buying, I have. I reach into my bag and I have it. This gives players ways of narratively functioning in the game without necessarily needing to plan everything out. It also has things like escape plan, where you activate it and you now have a way of getting out of situations, which actually works really well for a bad guy. That's something I actually love about Pathfinder 1E. Having your bad guys escape isn't hard, and you can have them come back. Sure, it's not going to survive if your players are like full force hammering the bad guy with damage, but they're not going to survive in 5th edition or 3.5 or many other role-playing games. Most systems are just not built for that. While Spheres of Power can function like that, it's better with a group of enemies. Spheres of Might introduces ways of manipulating the traditions of martial abilities in your setting. So each character gets a martial tradition, and a martial tradition is just 4 talents, which are feat-like things, or half feats if you're a 5e player, that build up what your character learned how to function. Something like a knight, which is like a full armored, sword wielding shield user. Well, there's stuff for that. Or maybe you're not necessarily a monk, but you've learned to fight hand to hand. Well, there's traditions or that allows you to break items with your hands. and do well that way. You can sunder down people's or your enemies' armor or weapons to help prevent them from functioning in the combat, or just outright prevent them from working. Period. Or or maybe you're looking for the uh maybe those don't work for you. You don't have to use the pre-built martial traditions. As a GM, you can literally just build traditions you think work for your setting. Maybe drows don't fight with crossbows and poisoned rapiers. Maybe they fight with massive fucking swords. And it's so you create a drow tradition, and maybe you just flavor the tradition as not even being spider related. Maybe drows aren't even related to spiders in your setting. Well, so maybe drows are like some weird elf bird hybrid. Their coloration is because that's just the coloration birds have underneath their feathers usually. Well, a lot of birds. So the big swords are dressed in feathers, and each drow tradition is something related to a bird. Maybe it's called hawk call, or each one has a name of a bird with song at the end. Canary song. Maybe the scouting stabbing style tradition. It's these flavors you can add through these martial traditions, and you can even build up like what spheres this tradition usually uses, which can help give your players knowledge on how the setting works. And the biggest one, spheres of power, gives GMs full control of how magic works in their system. It allows you, so there's 23 spheres now that each do something different, and they have some overlap. Like Fate Sphere has some healing capacities. Same thing with Nature, but Life focuses in on that. Life, or if you want to build a healer, you need to go Life Sphere. You can go with the other spheres, but they don't work nearly as well, unless you're looking for damage mitigation. Then Fate works well. So does War Sphere. Each sphere has a speciality, and you can, but that's not what allows you to control the how magic works. You then have magic traditions, which you attach a ability score to, the casting ability score, maybe out of wisdom, intelligence, and charisma, though there is a way to get constitution. Maybe you don't like that. Maybe you don't want it to be just that. Maybe there's big buff spellcasters in your system, and you want a strength-based spellcaster. It's relatively easy to do that. It's not overbalanced or unless you're going dexterity. Dexterity tends to be a strong stat. But you have these drawbacks you can apply to a tradition. Maybe you want the magic to come from evil eldritch entities far beyond our understanding. And in order to invocate these powers, you have to speak madness into reality, and it twists the setting around it. Well, that's magic science twisted, which twist reality. That's madness mantra, where you basically speak maddening tones. And maybe it's addictive power, where the more you use this power, the more the caster becomes addicted to it, and they need to cast it more in order to get that magical high they're looking for. Spheres of power is a hefty setting. It's system. It's easy to break down into for players and GMs in this way. You have casting level, which is based off your class, which can be and all your classes go to it. So if you're playing a paladin, half your paladin level goes to your caster level. While you're playing a paladin wizard, half your paladin level and your full wizard level. And each of your classes will tell you what they are. They're a full caster, a mid caster, or a half caster or low caster. Um, and then you have spell points. Spell points are just your mana. And you don't even, or not all spell or magic uses spell points, because almost all spheres have a cantrip like casting thing. Your fate sphere has a word. Your word is just a minor bonus, a minor buff. While life allows you to give people temporary hit points as long as it doesn't go over their full hit points, allowing them to damage mitigate. Destruction has just a simple attack. And after that, you can then adopt and then you have talents. Talents is pretty much half feats. They work by adding some kind of they either affect the main part of the sphere, the base sphere, which costs a single talent to get, or they add a whole new way of interacting with the world. Most of the time, they affect the base sphere, either by directly changing it exactly, so you have different words. They all function under the word power, but each have a different effect. And that's basically how spheres of power work. Now, Pathfinder is relatively easy to learn, and it's if you do a couple tricks. One, write down all your bonuses. That's all you have to do. You create your static bonuses, the bonuses you will always have. This is your weapon bonus from it being enchanted. This is your base attack bonus, which is basically a martial version of caster level. And your class will tell you what it is. Your class will also, or your BAB will be split into a couple things. It will be its level, or it'll be the base BAB, and then at BAB 6 it'll have a BAB 6-1, which means when you make a full attack action, which if you're using the sphere system, you're not going to be using anyways, most of the time. Then you gain an extra attack using that +1 instead of your +6. So, -5. And it does that every time. Once you hit BAB 13-6 and then it'll have an additional +1. And it keeps going up. And most of the time, again, you're not going to be full attacking. You don't have to really learn this if you're using Spheres of Might. So, and after that, you have AC, Touch AC, and Flat-Footed AC. These are easy enough to figure out. Touch AC is just without your armor, or your natural armor. So, if they just need to touch your general vicinity, it's going to be that. You don't get your armor. Flat-Footed is you don't have your dexterity or dodge. So they've caught you surprised. And Flat-Footed Touch AC, which is barely ever used unless you're building as a character specific builds, or as a GM a very specific thing, like the spellcaster catches the enemy or the party surprised, and they get their destructive blast when they're surprised. After that, most of Pathfinder's things is just a scaling thing. You are going to mark it down on your character sheet, so you don't need to keep track of it. And the only reason why you would is if you're doing a character-wide rebuild. And if you're doing that, you're just don't go back and try to rebuild the character. Figure out what your character was before. Maybe you mark down what your ability scores were beforehand, or maybe your GM just nice enough to allow you to re-roll. Unless you're using point buy. I don't see why you'd want to use point buy, but people like point buy, so easy enough. Pathfinder is not this big, so hard to learn system. It's not necessarily, or it's not all this math to it. Or there is a huge list of conditions. You're going to use maybe 10 of them at a time. And you're going to learn how they work as you go on. It's easy enough to play Pathfinder blind using online tools like D20PF SRD, which is a online SRD for all of Pathfinder's content, which is completely legal to use, and it includes even third-party contents, or the Archives of Nethys, which is the Pazio's own SRD that they've made, which includes all their content on there, including even copyrighted materials. They'll include their gods on it. They'll include feats that you're not technically allowed to publish. So maybe you want to use the Pathfinder's setting. It's easily found online. I wouldn't use it myself, but I prefer to make my own settings. I prefer my own generic fantasies if I'm going to use a generic fantasy. Pathfinder's setting is very much a generic kitchen sink style fantasy game. It's easy enough to play. And then you also have for Spheres of Power, you have the Spheres of Power wiki, which is helped produced even by the producers and the makers of the Spheres of Power system itself. It's Pathfinder is all easy online, and when you don't know something, you can look it up, and you can find it either on D20PF SRD or on Archives of Nethys. So you have the rules right in front of your face, and most rules work how they sound they work. Flat-footed, yeah, it removes your dex and dodge. There's no weird extra math you have to take. Just figure that out. And most character sheets will just have that auto-calculated for you. So, Pathfinder is not the boogeyman. It is not Mathfinder. There are ways of making it a lot more complicated, and I enjoy that. I really enjoy adding traits or allowing players to choose 2 traits. This allows players to control how their characters work in minor ways. Maybe they're playing a character and they don't have the heal skill, and they really want to play a doctor. So they take the one trait that allows them to get heal as a cross-class skill or as a normal skill. Or there's like ways of basically going, I want to use my Constitution modifier with my profession blacksmithing. Well, there's the Bandit trait, which allows you to add a different modifier. Well, allows you to add additional modifier on top of your Wisdom score, so you can on a profession checks. And you don't need to use traits. You don't need to use drawbacks. The base system is easy enough to figure out. Your class is going to determine most things. If you cross-class, then your additional class, or you take your first class or find out the level you are, and then you take all those statistics and you add your secondary class on it. Now you get some wonky things with saves, because the saves don't work the same way. You have to figure out. The saves are weird, and it's one of the more complicated ones that even a lot of people don't get their heads wrapped around. But it also includes Pathfinder includes a bunch of different combat things. Maybe you want to build around a grapple style character. Well, it's not just an athletics check that does nothing to the combat. You can literally make your character do damage in addition with your grapple. Or if you're using Spheres of Might, there's the Wrestling Sphere, which revolves around the grapple ability. And you can do things like choke your enemies out during a grapple, which makes them start suffocating, which sounds strong, but it takes a long while to get it rolling. So if they're just doing damage, they're going to kill the monster in about the same time they can choke the monster out. The benefit of it is you can do it you can do it 2 times. And it's not even that strong when you're choking out 2 monsters, because they can, or if they beat it, then they just get their breath back and you have to start over again. But the best thing about the Pathfinder's grapple is it actually has a consequence to your enemies. It also has a consequence to your player. They have penalties against each other, and it's harder to use certain weapons in the grapple. And it's not only just you lose your you don't get to move anymore. And then there's conditions. Most conditions are just, there's something you can add on to a combat to get it to work. And most players aren't going to have access to or be able to do all conditions. The person who's going to need to know the conditions is the GM, and they don't even need to know all the conditions. They can learn a condition as they're playing. Maybe that monster, that ghoul you're using, you don't understand you didn't read how the paralysis works. Well, it's relatively easy. You just look it up on D20 PFSOD or the archives in Nethys, and it does that. And it's not going to be weird, wonky things. Paralyzed just means the person who's paralyzed loses their turn, basically. And it lasts for a while. It is bad. It sucks as a player to get paralyzed. But it makes it deadly. It makes a ghoul not feel like it's just a sack of meat points to get slammed in, and slam your players with reducing their meat points. Sometimes the ghoul hits with its paralyzing bite or claws, and it basically removes that player from the combat for 2d4 rounds. That sucks for that player, but now they need to play around that. They can't just sit there going unga bunga and hit it. They know that, okay, I need to step backwards. I can't just fight the ghouls up front. I need to play around their abilities. And most monsters are like that. Pathfinder is a wonderful system. It's complicated in weird spots, but it's not hard to find the rules. It's not hard to understand the rules. They're written in relatively plain English. And they're somewhat technical, but not always. And you don't need to know all the rules. Just understand the base things. The action economy. It's easy enough to pick up. You have a standard action, you have a move action, and you have a swift action. You have infinite free actions, and so your attacks are going to be standard actions. Your movement is going to be a move action, but you'll have some abilities that function off of move actions or swift actions, or even free actions, which gives your combat a more dynamic feeling. And if you're using Spheres of Spheres of Might, it even adds a more dynamic feeling because you can combo things. Your open hand style character uses the sweep action, which is a move action, to trip an opponent at a -2. And then when their opponents hit the ground, they get to punch them. And then they didn't use their standard action, so they get to punch them again. And because they're prone, they take a penalty to their AC. And maybe they have the axe kick, which allows them to hit the opponent harder when they're on the ground. It's this combo of abilities that can be a little hard for some people to pick up. But someone who puts in maybe 10-20 minutes learning how their character functions or even trying to piece together getting how it works, you'll get a character you like. You will most likely enjoy your spheres of power, martial or might or guile character because you control how it works. Not only that, you can build the character how you want it. You can build the character to function in the setting if your GM has a more setting built style character things with different martial traditions and magic traditions. For instance, my Eberron game includes only the magic traditions of Eberron, which is more generic D&D traditions, and with a little bit of a twist. Like you can manipulate them a bit, but I don't allow like the Scion of the Crown from the normal Spheres of Power magic traditions because I don't want that. Or I have a sci-fi fantasy setting where there's only a few magic traditions. Those are the only traditions, and you have to choose one, and they have to work exactly like that tradition is, because not or because magic isn't flexible in the system. Magic is just that's how magic works. You're either born with it, you're either corrupted by some weird eldritch abomination hidden in some alternate reality, or you use nanites to create a almost pseudo magic. It's not magic, but it works like magic. And then you have the weirder traditions, like the monk manipulate their own life energy, or or the creepy motionless entities that sacrifice their humanity to gain this weird eldritch abomination power. And it's or maybe there's a racial magic that allows these plant human hybrids to manipulate plants and insects along with and they manipulate them into more wondrous biotechnologies. Or there's these mushroom folk that have a nanite-like ability to manipulate microscopic mycelium fungus, and it because it's a full magic system in that way. And for me, I like spheres list. Each tradition has a list of spheres it's able to use because while the magic that you're born with is something the player can manipulate by choosing a theme. And a theme doesn't even need to be like this. It doesn't need to be something that makes real logical sense in a lot of ways. Your theme could be fire, and it has the thematics of passion to it. So you don't just manipulate fire, like the hot essence in real life, but you manipulate the fires of someone's heart, spurring them into action. You manipulate their passions, driving them into insanity. So, Spheres allows you to manipulate how you build your setting and how characters play. And you can build weird things. You could build the Hulk. You could build Iron Man using the tech sphere. You could, and you don't even need to stop at the superhero things. You can build characters from whatever pop culture thing you like. And it's not hard, and you can get it like that. You don't need to go, I'm playing the Hulk, but I'm a barbarian with these abilities that I don't think the Hulk has. Or I'm an artificer trying to play Iron Man, but I get, again, all these magics I don't think Iron Man should have. So the end, I'd say Pathfinder is easy to pick up. You just need to look at it. You don't need to understand everything. It's easy enough to find it online nowadays. And if you if you don't want your players to have a tablet at the table or their phone, when they ask you how does something work, you have the tablet. There's no reason why you as the GM are going to get distracted at the table. You have to be invested the whole entire time. It doesn't matter if you have a tablet or phone to look up the rules really quickly. Um, Spheres of Power and Spheres of Might and Spheres of Guile add this wonderful element of how do you want to make the system work for you rather than being forced to work around the system. And all the stuff is free online. There is no reason, or there is no paywall. It is this inclusive system because it's easy to access. If your players don't want to spend, $500 buying new rule sets, they can just easily get onto Pathfinder. And most or a lot of the third-party system stuff is online too. Maybe you want a more almost magic-like martial system. There's the Path of War from Dreamscarred Press, which adds a something from 3.5 called the Tome of Nine Swords, and you gain these blocks of abilities that are weapon based, but they almost have like a mystical anime-like function to them. Or maybe you want like old school psionics in the game. Old school, I mean 3.5, which is pretty old school nowadays. Dreamscarred Press also included psionics. Maybe you want magic to be a little bit esoteric, and instead of weaving spells, they weave magic like it's a magic item and wear it. Well, Mysteries of the Akashic Mysteries is just that. Again, by Dreamscarred Press. Dreamscarred Press makes quite a lot of old D&D 3.5 subsystems for Pathfinder. Magic of Incarnum would be Akashic Mysteries. And you can find this all online using D20 PFSRD. So your game doesn't even need to have all the stuff. You can have it be as simple to the rules as you want. Maybe you just want to play a normal Pathfinder game. Easy enough. Maybe there's rules you've always wanted to add to your game. Maybe you want to add the spreadsheet simulator of the Kingdom rule set. I really enjoy kingdom building in Pathfinder because each building has a special purpose that that adds to a kingdom score or even allows you to do something a little weird with during your kingdom phases. It's not going to be for everyone, and a lot of the rules or a lot of the non-core rules are going to be like that. But the fact that they're there and they're fully fleshed out, that you can use them then, and there's a beautiful third-party community that formed around Pathfinder, and it includes a bunch of things. And there's even there's a race builder built into Pathfinder, so that you can so you understand the race points of each class. It's not a great system, but it gives you a general idea, and you're going to need to manipulate it a little bit. Maybe some points or some things are going to be worth a little bit more points than they say they are, or a little less, and you're going to need to manipulate what the class gets. Or maybe you don't want to use the Pathfinder's race point system. Drop Dead Studios, which produces the Spheres of Power, has something called Origin Spheres, which basically is just a race system or a background system like thing that is just feats. Pretty much all Spheres of Power and Pathfinder tends to be is a lot of feats. And they're not these super overpowered things like they are in 5e where they make drastic changes to how your character plays out. They're more incremental. They're half feats. They build upon each other. Just, I don't know, try Pathfinder. You may find yourself enjoying it. Anyways, that's my rant. See you guys later. You have a good day. Bye.